Hello, and welcome to episode 52 of Chorus Place. I'm so glad you've chosen to join me for today's conversation. In today's episode, I will be sharing with all of you how writing has been an important part of my life and why I enjoy it. As always, if you like what you hear, please leave a review and/or comments, follow my podcast, and tell your friends. Also, please follow the podcast page I've made on Facebook. If you'd like to contact me via email instead of a Facebook message, you can email me at corachin@mailbox.org. If you are new here, welcome. I'm your host, Cora, and I am so excited to have you on this journey with me. Today, I want to talk about my history of writing, why I love it, and even some of the ways it has impacted my life or helped me through different things I have faced in my life in recent years, as of the recording of this episode. Before I get into that, though, I just want to apologize for not posting for a long time. It wasn't completely intentional to miss for this long. I just wanted to make sure I had at least a couple of episodes ready before I started again, so I wouldn't fall behind or miss posting one. I had originally intended to bring it back relatively soon after New Year's, but then, at the same time, I wanted to make sure I had tried to get more scripts and recording done, so I didn't have to worry about that as much and could just focus on editing more. I meant to mention this in last week's episode, but then had already recorded the episode before I remembered to add it. Now, with all of that taken care of, let's dive into it. Up until maybe somewhere around 2020 or so, writing wasn't necessarily my favorite thing in the world to do as a hobby. I feel like it somehow became considerably more enjoyable to me in 2020 or 2021 when we couldn't go out to do much and do things because of COVID. It might have also just become more enjoyable for me once I had realized how much better it was for me to write about different situations or my feelings on things. I think writing helps me process my emotions better sometimes, depending on the situation. It can be hard for me to write about them at first, though, when I'm struggling to come up with words to say, and even still just when I'm processing the situation. I can't always write about things immediately. Sometimes I just have to sit with whatever's happening at first, and then write about it, if that makes any sense. It's not that I don't want to write about it immediately, though. I just don't always have the clearest of thoughts at first when I'm facing a hard situation. When I can process a little first before writing about it, that seems easier because then my thoughts might be a little clearer than they were at first. Some situations I can write or journal about in the midst of them, and some I cannot. It depends on how big or sudden they were. There are probably several reasons why I love writing, but one of the reasons that I just mentioned is because it helps me to process situations sometimes. Another reason I really enjoy it is because I like writing as a hobby. I think it would be a really fun career for me someday if it works out. I don't typically write big things like books, though. It's mostly just a lot of smaller projects. As of the recording of this episode, I do currently have a couple of books in progress, but I'm not sure if I will actually publish them or not. In addition to those, I have also done some other little things, and I've even written a few Bible study lessons that I made and did with a friend at one point. I share the Bible study lessons in episodes 11 through 16 on the podcast, so if you want to hear those, you can go back and listen to them. With my podcast, I write the scripts for each episode. I definitely do enjoy writing my own scripts. It's not always easy coming up with things to say, but I do enjoy it and it gives me something to be excited about. I have a few favorite episodes that I've done before. I think the hardest part for me of doing a podcast is the editing. Editing is not particularly a favorite thing of mine because it tends to be a time-consuming process and can sometimes be tricky to do as well. As I said before, I find writing to be helpful for me when I am processing a hard situation. I think that writing is a nice outlet for me to get all of my thoughts out and maybe even provide some clarity to a situation. It also gives me a nice way to just vent and also kind of relax, too. If I had to pick a favorite thing so far that I have written, as of the recording of this episode, that would be kind of hard because I like a lot of the things I have written, but for different reasons. Writing has not always been my favorite thing to do, but maybe since around 2020 or so, it has definitely become one of my favorite things to spend time working on. It might even be why I like doing my podcast so much, because I get to write all of my own episodes. Making a podcast is more of an ongoing project since you have to consistently make and release episodes, but I still really enjoy it, and I cannot believe that we are already over 50 regular episodes in. I hope to make episodes for as long as I possibly can. It's a couple of my favorite things combined into one. The two favorite things being writing and talking. It is sometimes hard to release regularly, though, when I have a lot of script writing, recording, and editing to do, all kind of at the same time or relatively quickly. I know I only do one episode a week when I am regularly posting, but sometimes I don't have an episode ready soon enough. Thankfully, it doesn't seem to happen too often if I remember to be more proactive about it and even already have part of a script ready. I usually try to come up with my topic before I start writing the episode, so to me, not knowing ahead of time what topic I am doing can make it feel kind of stuck at first. It can be hard to come up with ideas for topics, especially when you have already done several different things. Once I figure out my topic, it seems to get at least a little bit easier for a little bit. If you all ever have any ideas for topics you would like me to talk about on the podcast, please reach out to me. I would love to hear your ideas and hopefully even try to figure out a way that I could be able to do them. Writing does not always come easy. Sometimes I have a very hard time knowing what to write, especially when I have been writing a lot for a little bit. It's helpful when inspiration hits, though. I do also have to take breaks at times when I lose my train of thought or when I lose focus more easily. I'm not really sure what my favorite thing is that I've ever written. I like a lot of them for different reasons. I think one of my favorite categories of writing that I have done would probably have to be either my podcast scripts or my Bible study lessons. Another reason I love writing is being able to share what I write with others. Usually when I share something that I write with someone, it's something short. I also love being able to write about my feelings in a specific situation. It's not usually a very long thing. I have shared longer things before with others, but generally they are pretty short. I also usually only share things with people I am closer to. I do make an exception to that sometimes, though. It just depends on who it is and what I wrote. Usually with the more personal things, I will just stick with people I am closer to. With the more general things, I tend to have an easier time sharing those. It definitely can still be hard, though, to share, even when it is one of the more general things. The more personal ones are probably the hardest to share, though. Not because they are bad, but because they are maybe a little bit closer to my heart, and it can be very hard to share things that you are struggling with. Especially when, or if you don't know some of the people very well that you would consider sharing hard things with, or actually be sharing with. The better you know someone, I think it can be easier to share. Maybe not with every person, but at least some probably. It does take time to work up to that point, though. It does not usually happen right away. Even if you are close to someone, it can still be really hard to share. I even have that happen to me occasionally, where I don't feel ready to share something, even with somebody I am closer to. Especially when it's a bigger thing I'm facing in my life. It's okay, though, if it takes time before you are ready to share something with someone. It does not make you a failure if you choose to wait before sharing. It can actually be a wise decision to wait sometimes, depending on the situation. To close out this episode, let's get back onto the topic of writing, and I also just want to give you some encouragement. Writing is something you may have to work at for a little bit before you get really good at it. Sometimes it may come more naturally, and other times you have to work at it. I think that I have probably experienced both scenarios at some point in my writing journey. Writing can be really fun, and it can also be a really healthy way to process situations you face. I have also seen that on my journey with writing as well. When it gets hard, remember that if you keep trying, it won't always be hard. That doesn't just apply to writing, though. That can apply to anything in life, not just writing. It's something I even need to regularly remind myself of. I tend to forget things like that, and I definitely need to work on it more often. I don't want that to discourage you from trying, though. I know it can be hard when things don't work out the way you hoped. I have faced that a lot in my own life throughout different challenges and things I have faced. I think that everyone faces it at some point in life. Keep trying and persevere. If you give up on writing or any other dream of yours, you could miss out on something amazing God has in store for your future. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please follow, leave a comment, and a review of my podcast if you haven't already, and please follow my podcast page on Facebook so you never miss an update. If you have any verses you'd like me to read on a future episode, or if you have any topics you'd like me to talk about, you can email me at corachin@mailbox.org, or you can send me a message on my podcast page on Facebook through the link in the show notes, and I will get back to you when I can. Hope you tune in next week for episode 53.